Man, you ever hear something that just stops you cold? That's what happened to me. I was just scrolling, but then I started learning how Islam talks about the end of times. And let me tell you something. I was not ready. Because the way they break it down, it ain't no Hollywood movie. It's a roadmap with checkpoints and timelines. This ain't a horror story, it's a wake-up call. Stay with me, because this story changed how I look at my own life. Let me tell you something, man. There are some topics you grow up hearing about your whole life, but you never really sit down and study them. You just kind of pick up pieces. A movie here, a church sermon there, some old lady on the porch saying, "Baby, the world's ending soon." And you think you understand it. You think, yeah, Judgment Day, end of the world, scary stuff, got it. But then I started learning about how Islam talks about the end of times. And let me tell you something, I was not ready. Because the way Islam breaks it down, it ain't like no Hollywood movie. It ain't like no vague spiritual metaphor. It's like God handed humanity a roadmap with checkpoints, timelines, characters, events, and this thing called signs that unfold one by one like dominoes falling across history. And I'm reading this stuff like, hold up. Why does this sound way too specific? Because I'm used to end of times talk being all cloudy and poetic, like darkness will rise, the seas will roar, mankind will tremble. But Islam goes, all right, here's what's going to happen. First this, then this person shows up. Then God's going to take the soul of every believer. Then the sun's going to rise from the west. I'm looking around like, who wrote this? A prophet or a screenwriter? And see, the first thing that shook me was this whole thing about the Dajjal, what Muslims call the Antichrist. Not just a bad man, not a villain, a literal deceiver who shows up claiming to be God on earth. And Islam says he's going to trick people with miracles, fake paradise, fake hell, control weather, control wealth, and get people to bow down to him because he gives them what they want. And when I read that, I said, man, that sounds like every crooked leader, every corrupt celebrity, every manipulative influencer rolled into one. That ain't a fairy tale, that sounds like a preview. And what really messed me up is Islam says the people who follow the Dajjal AI ain't going to be dumb. They're going to be people who lost their connection to truth. People who just want comfort, not faith. I said, well, ain't that the world we living in right now? But see, Islam doesn't just talk about evil showing up. It says God is going to send protection too. And that's where the return of Jesus, Isa, comes in. Now, that threw me off because I grew up Christian. And we always heard Jesus was coming back. But nobody ever told me that Muslims believe the same thing. They believe Jesus is going to come back for real with his real body. The same Jesus that was born to Mary. They say he's coming back not as a new prophet, but as a judge. And when Islam said Jesus is going to return and destroy the Dajjal and lead the world into justice, I sat there like, wait, so y'all been waiting on Jesus too? And nobody told us this. And then just when I thought I had processed enough, Islam hits me with this thing called Gog and Magog. Islam describes them like a real nation or army trapped behind a barrier somewhere in this world. And when God releases them, they come pouring out like a flood, overwhelming humanity until even Jesus and his followers have to retreat and pray for God's help. I'm sitting there like, man, y'all got a whole apocalypse storyline with characters, events, and phases. And it was written 1400 years ago before nukes, before artificial intelligence. This is sounding way too prophetic to be ignored. And here's the part that really made me stop joking and start thinking. Islam doesn't describe the end of times like a fantasy. It describes it like a warning. It says the signs are already showing that the world won't end suddenly. It will decline slowly, morally, spiritually, socially, families falling apart, greed becoming normal, lies outshining truth. And I said, man, we ain't headed into that world. We're already living in it. Because the more I kept reading, the more I realized this ain't just a story about the end of the world. It's a story about the test before the end. Islam doesn't talk about the end of times like it's some faraway disaster. It talks about it like a mirror. Like the world is already drifting toward the finish line, one choice at a time. It says you're living in the pre-Dajjal world right now. The values, the culture, the confusion, the hunger for fame, the obsession with money, All of that is the rehearsal. And when I realized that, man, I had to lean back in my chair like, oh, so you're telling me everything we call modern and advanced might just be the warm-up show for the biggest scam in human history? Here's how Islam explains it. The Dajjal doesn't show up randomly. The world gets ready for him. Truth gets watered down. Religion becomes a fashion statement. People believe whatever feels good, not what's true. And that's when I really got chills, because Islam says one of the signs of the end is when lies spread faster than truth, and when people build platforms instead of character. I said, that's literally the internet. That's social media. That's half the world right now. And then I came across something even crazier. Islam says there will come a time when people won't just follow the Dajjal. They'll love him. They'll celebrate him. They'll defend him. We live in a generation where the moment somebody gives us convenience, we stop asking about character. That's the kind of mindset that opens the door for a deceiver. And Islam calls the Dajjal the greatest deceiver in history. Not because he forces people, but because he feeds their desires. But the part that brought everything full circle was this. Islam says when Jesus, Isa, returns, he doesn't come back preaching a new religion. He comes back and says, I never asked you to worship me. I told you to worship the one who sent me. And Islam says Jesus breaks the cross. Not because he hates Christians, but because he's correcting the story. He comes back as the truth. And when I tell you that, right there hit me like a truck, man. I grew up with Jesus as the center of my life. And now I'm reading a religion that says the real Jesus, the one I always loved, that same Jesus is coming back. And Muslims and believers from everywhere will stand behind him together. And I'm thinking, why did nobody teach us that? Why did nobody tell us Islam and Christianity aren't enemies at the end? They're allies against evil. So now I'm sitting here realizing I spent decades hearing about Armageddon in vague language. But Islam breaks it down like a court case. It's not a legend. It's not a metaphor. It reads like history that just hasn't happened yet. And that's when something in me clicked. This ain't a horror story. It's a wake-up call, not about fear, but about direction. Like God is saying, I'm telling you how it ends so you can choose where you stand before it begins. Now here's the part that really got into my chest, because once you read enough of this stuff, you stop thinking about the end of the world like it's some movie explosion in the sky, and you start realizing the end of times is really just the final exam of the world we already living in. Islam ain't just talking about earthquakes and monsters. It's talking about the condition of the human heart. It's saying the world don't fall apart because God suddenly destroys it. The world falls apart because people stop caring about truth, and the more I sat with that, the more it hit me. This whole life is a test, not of how rich you get, but whether you can stay truthful in a world that's begging you to lie. Whether you can stay humble in a world built on showing off. And that's when I realized something deep. The end of times ain't scary for the people who live right. It's scary for the people who spent their whole lives thinking this world was home. Because if you believe this life is temporary and the next life is forever, then the end ain't a tragedy. It's a transition. And I'll be honest with you, that humbled me. We live like we're going to be here forever. We get mad over little stuff, chase things that won't even matter next year. See, Islam says when the end comes, you don't get to rewrite your story. You only get to face it. The way the world is today, man, we are masters at editing our lives. We filter the truth. But Islam is saying there's going to come a day where there's no hiding, no acting, no image, no PR team. Just you, your deeds, and the one who saw everything you thought nobody saw. And then it hit me even harder. If the world really is heading toward those final signs, and let's be real, it sure feels like it, then the smartest thing a person can do right now ain't panic, it's prepare. Not by building bunkers, but by cleaning up the inside, fixing the heart. Islam says the greatest protection in the end times ain't a weapon, it's faith. You don't need Gog and Magog to destroy society. Just pride, greed, and faithlessness can do it faster than any army. And I'll be real with you. If there's one thing I learned from digging into all this, it's that God didn't warn us about the end to scare us. He warned us to wake us up. Because every soul that hears the truth and changes, even a little, is a soul that won't be lost when the test becomes real. So, if there's one thing I'd say after learning all this, it's this right here. Don't wait for the world to fall apart before you start fixing your soul. Because the truth is, the end of the world ain't the real deadline. Your deadline is the day your heart stops beating. That's your personal day of judgment. The money stays, the fame stays, the body stays, the followers stays, the house stays, and only your deeds go with you. And that makes you realize something powerful. The end of times might not be tonight, but your end could be tonight. And if that don't wake you up, nothing will. I'm saying it because every time I learn something like this, it shakes me a little more awake. Makes me look at my attitude, my ego, my prayer, my mistakes. Because if God wrote this whole final chapter in advance and he still gave us a chance to change before it comes, then that's not punishment. That's mercy. So before the world ends, fix the world inside you. Before the Dajjal tries to fool the world, stop letting the Dajjal of your desires fool you. Because the return of Jesus ain't just a prophecy. It's a reminder. Truth always comes back. The only thing that survives is faith.